Channel NITT viewers, I am DS, your psychologist, and welcome to another episode on Channel NITT. So this episode is inspired by one of our viewers, Natural Instinct. He mentioned that ENTJs and ESTJs should be very similar because both use TE as their dominant function. And TE is such an overbearing, powerful function that it may totally flood the effects of our auxiliary function. So at Channel NITT, we have previously released an episode on the differences between the ENTJ and the ESTJ, and that is episode 65. So if you are a viewer who is not familiar with cognitive functions, you can watch the episode first, because that episode we do not discuss anything that might confuse you. So in this episode, we are going to continue to talk about the differences between the ENTJ and the ESTJ using the discussion of cognitive functions. So an ESTJ uses SI as their auxiliary function and ENTJ uses NI as their auxiliary function. So it's the SI and NI that actually differentiates between the ENTJ and the ESTJ. But both SI and NI are very introverted functions. SI is particularly very slow. NI is all in the mind, it's about imagination. So you can't see both of them very clearly. So that is why it is very hard to distinguish between the ESTJ and an ENTJ, even though when you look at someone, you definitely know that he is a TE user. If you're having trouble trying to profile yourself, you know that you have TE, definitely you are either an ESTJ or an ENTJ, but you don't know which one you are. It is very simple. All you need to do is ask yourself, do you have NI? So I have released 2 episodes on NI, so you can actually watch them and see if they resonate with you. Do the examples that I give you explain who you are? If they describe you somehow, then surely you have NI, and this means that you are an ENTJ. If it does not, then unfortunately, then you are an ESTJ. No, unfortunately. So it is very easy for you to decide if you have NI because you know your own imagination, you know what's on your mind. But other people may not know what's on your mind. So if you're trying to profile a person, is this person an ESTJ or an ENTJ? Then it is harder because you do not know what goes on in their mind. So all you need now to do is to observe them very carefully. So in episode 65, I have actually described 3 differences between the ESTJ and the ENTJ in terms of their physical appearance and how they approach things. So in this episode, we're going to add on some more.
Tell me what's on your mind.
First, the ENTJ is definitely faster than the ESTJ because NI is a faster cognitive function than SI. SI users tend to prefer to do things serially, one by one. So ESTJ have the tendency to do things one after the other. They order things and they do them in sequence. They prefer it that way. So we can say that ESTJs tend to approach problems serially. They finish one thing first, then they move on to the other.
Take one step at a time. There's no need to rush.
This is their habit. However, the NI is a function that goes in parallel. So NI is able to allow the user to do multiple things at the same time. So the ENTJ is going to be much more willing to multitask than the ESTJ. In fact, most ENTJs I think would prefer to multitask. So in my case, I am concurrently doing YouTube, I'm also teaching, I'm also doing a lot of work at the same time, and it makes me feel very stimulated. If you take any of these components away, naturally as an ENTJ, I will gravitate towards finding new things to fill up the space. I just cannot take one thing at a time, it's too boring for me, it's very understimulating. I think on the other hand, for the ESTJ, having too many things on their plate becomes over-arousing and they do not like it. So if you really want to know whether someone is an ENTJ or an ESTJ, you can look at how they approach things, whether it's serially or in parallel. Ask them about their life. So just looking them do things doesn't really work because TE is really too powerful, too in your face. So you can only see TE. If you want to know whether someone has NI or SI, then you have to observe them over a period of time. This This is because NI and SI are very introverted function. It takes a long time for you to be able to see them. But you can see them, of course. So a second difference between the ENTJ and the ESTJ is that the ESTJ tend to be very traditional. So they go by book, they tend to prefer proven methods. ENTJs are more adventurous. Now there was a period of time I think the ESTJs are no fun at all. However, I have observed a few ESTJs myself. They are parents and they really know how to bond and have fun with their children. So in this regard, I was wrong. Actually, ESTJs can be very good parents, can be very loving parents, although they definitely want to punish their children if they are misbehaving. As a parent, the ENTJ is going to be more inconsistent. Sometimes I feel that I am going to be indulgent, at other times I am not. So if you want to know whether someone is an ENTJ or an ESTJ, the ENTJ is definitely much more unconventional than the ESTJ. They don't like to be traditional. They are more like to be rebels. They want to do things very differently, they dress differently, they like colors, they are more outgoing. A third thing that I discover of many ESTJs is that they don't like to play the guessing game. So let's say you meet a particular person and then you say, oh, what's your occupation? So I say, why don't you take a guess? The ESTJ say, just tell lah. They don't want to play the game. But for me, I really like to play the game. So many of the ESTJs that I know seldom want to play the guessing game. So be it occupation or birth dates, they just don't like to guess for too long. So they will say, okay lah, I just guess once, just tell me the next time. Okay, when are you born? She will say, okay, 4th. I said wrong. Okay, just tell me. They have no patience in playing this game. But for the ENTJ, sometimes they are really going to be very engaged in this, but not all the time. They must like you first. So if I just got to know someone and this someone is not somebody I'm really interested in forming a bond with, then I won't be bothered with this guessing game at all. It's just not a stimulating activity at all. So a first condition that must be met for you to identify the ENTJ is that they must like you first in order to play this guessing game. Or should you get the ESTJ or the ENTJ to play the guessing game with you, take note, the ENTJ is more likely to make random guesses. So they can look at you and say, is it an even number? Okay, 16. They can just ask one clue and then they are willing to guess. The ENTJ is more likely to take risks. However, for the ESTJ, they just like to collect information because of SI. So they may say, okay, is it an even number? Is it bigger than 10? Okay, is it smaller than 20? Is it a multiple of 4? So they need more information before they are willing to guess. By which time there's no need to guess, really, the answer is obvious. So the guessing game defeats its purpose, right? Okay, go try it with your ENTJ or ESTJ friends. You should be able to find the difference. So a fourth difference that I'm going to mention is with the blind spot. ENTJ's blind spot is SI and ESTJ's blind spot is NI. So their auxiliary function is each other's blind spot. Interesting, right? So at Channel NITT, we have already released a few SI blind spot episodes for the ENTJ. So if you are interested to know how SI affects the ENTJ as a blind spot, you can watch those episodes to get more information. However, in a nutshell, because of SI blind spot, the ENTJ is very unlikely to enjoy doing paperwork. They also do not like following routines somehow or another. Some ENTJs can be really bad with machines.
Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga. No.
So the ESTJ have NI as their blind spot. So what does it mean to have NI blind spot? So there are a few characteristics of NI as a blind spot. So one characteristic of NI as a blind spot means that the ESTJ is an individual who really needs evidence to feel assured. They are very unlikely to believe in the counterintuitive. So for example, if the ESTJ had already broken up with someone and it has been 3 or 4 years, they would never believe that the person could actually miss them. They would say, it has already been 3 or 4 years. I never even see them. How could they miss me? So the ESTJ is very likely to trust evidence, especially concrete visible evidence only. Another manifestation of NI blind spot is that the ESTJ does not seem to be able to appreciate jokes with puns. The ESTJ is also likely to be slower in seeing deeper meaning when there is actually a hidden layer behind what people are saying. And because of the lack of NI with NI blind spot, one other characteristic of the ESTJ is that the ESTJ has no sense of humor. Just not humorous at all. The jokes they tell like cricket sounds. So an ESTJ has told me a joke before. I was like, funny man. Now, given the SE is the third function of the ENTJ, SE may play a role in distinguishing between the ESTJ and the ENTJ. The ENTJ is very more likely to be playful and unable to delay gratification compared to the very stable ESTJ. So I remember when I was younger, this happens to be worse. I seem to be like a child. I can get into fights, yes.
Round 2. Fight!
I remember very clearly an incident that happened when I was 22. I was out with a group of schoolmates and we went to eat ice cream. So I shared an ice cream with another girl and we had 5 scoops and we are supposed to share these 5 scoops served on a bowl. So out of nowhere, this girl that I was sharing the ice cream with asked me, "Do you dare to use your hand to take the ice cream out and then eat it from your hand?" It seems very weird now to think about it, but I think then we were very young adults, so we were just always thinking of how to have fun. So I told her, if you dare to do it, then I will do it. And she really did it. So I did it after her. Just took one ice cream and then it's in my hand. Everybody around us was saying that we were weird, like yee! But it's okay, I'm just sharing the ice cream with her. Nobody else is supposed to eat it. And we like it. This is something that the ESTJ will not do. But now to think about it, as an ENTJ, that was my younger days, I may still do it, but less likely to do it now that I'm older. But still possible for me to do it. Just like when I go clubbing or when I go to a party, I just want to dance. I am very excited to want to do certain things that may be very childlike, like enjoying myself. I still like to go to the arcade. I'm not too sure whether the ESTJ is as hyper as the ENTJ in this regard. Okay, I hope that this episode has also given you some idea how to distinguish between the ESTJ and the ENTJ. If you have not subscribed, do consider subscribing so that we can bring you more MBTI. Okay, I'm going to sign off now and I see you in my next episode. Goodbye!